This story is presented as a real-life account inspired by witness reports, field notes, and events that were never fully explained. Some names and details have been changed. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story is one of the most disturbing search and rescue accounts I've ever heard. A trained rescue officer goes into the mountains looking for one missing hiker. But before the night is over, his team realizes they are no longer the ones doing the searching. Something else is out there. Something that knows the woods. Something that can mimic voices. And something that seems to understand exactly how to lure people into the dark. I worked search and rescue for nearly 7 years. Long enough to learn one thing most people never understand. At night, the forest stops feeling like a place. It starts feeling like a trap. And the case that still follows me, the one that still wakes me up some nights, started with a missing hiker. A simple call. One man overdue on a trail. But by the end of that night, we understood something horrifying. We weren't alone out there. And whatever was in those woods wasn't hunting the missing man. It was hunting us. So before we begin, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and turn on notifications if you enjoy true horror stories, dark wilderness encounters, and terrifying unexplained cases. Now, let's get into it. When people talk about the wilderness, they usually talk about peace, silence, fresh air, escape. That's how people describe the woods when they've only seen them in daylight. But when you work search and rescue, you see something else. You see how fast a trail disappears in darkness. How easy it is to miss one turn and walk straight into a ravine. How sound travels in ways that make no sense. How panic makes smart people do stupid things. And how, once the sun goes down, even familiar ground can feel hostile. That's why I never believed in ghost stories, creatures, or campfire myths. In our line of work, everything had a reason. An echo was an echo. A scream was usually a fox. Eyes in the dark belonged to deer, coyotes, sometimes mountain lions. There was always an explanation. At least, that's what I believed before Black Ridge. The call came in during late October. Cold season, unstable weather, long shadows by late afternoon. A 26-year-old hiker named Ethan Mercer had signed in at Black Ridge State Forest that morning and never returned. His car was still at the trailhead after sunset. His phone had last pinged deep inside the Hollow Pass sector. Family said he was experienced, but not experienced enough to disappear overnight without telling anyone. By 8 p.m., our team was assembled near the trailhead. 7 of us were going in. Greg Halpin, team lead, former Army medic, stone calm under pressure. Lena Ortiz, tracker, the best ground reader I ever worked with. Mason and Tyler for medical and recovery support. Brooks on communications. Me on navigation and search pattern coordination. And Owen Pike, the newest member of the unit. Owen was capable, trained, and eager. Too eager. He still had that energy new people get when they think fear is something you can outwork. We briefed under red lamps while the ranger laid out the map. Ethan had planned to hike Hollow Pass to Griever's Lookout and return before dark. Not impossible, but ambitious for a solo hike in October. Then the ranger told us something I still remember word for word. 2 campers reported hearing somebody calling for help near the east drainage around dusk. Greg asked, "Could it be Mercer?" The ranger hesitated. Maybe. But both campers were almost a mile apart, and both said the voice sounded exactly the same each time. This caught my attention. "How the same?" I asked. The ranger looked at me. A simple tone, same spacing, same volume, like it wasn't a person yelling, like it was repeating. Nobody said anything after that. Greg just assigned our routes and kept it professional. Team 1, Greg, Lena, and me, would sweep toward Hollow Pass and cut northeast into the drainage. Team 2, Mason, Tyler, Brooks, and Owen, would work a lower line in parallel, checking drop-offs, slide areas, and stream channels. Every 15 minutes, radio check. Nobody leaves formation. Nobody goes chasing voices into the woods. Simple, controlled, routine. At first, the search felt normal. Cold air, wet leaves, headlamps carving tunnels through pine trunks, the trail narrowing as we climbed. Lena found fresh-looking boot sign near a muddy split in the trail. Could have been Ethan. The print pattern suggested he'd stepped off the marked path, not confidently, more like he had turned suddenly, lost footing, and drifted off course. That bothered me, because lost hikers usually wander in one direction. This looked like someone reacting to something. Still, we kept moving, calling Ethan's name, listening, advancing, and then, at 9:47 p.m., we reached the upper drainage line, and we heard it. Help! It came from the trees to our right. Faint, male, human. Every muscle in my body locked. Greg raised a fist and we froze. There it was again. Help! That should have been a relief. That should have meant we found him. But the second time I heard it, something felt wrong. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't shaky. It sounded placed, like the exact same sound, played back from the exact same distance. Greg called out, "Ethan! Search and rescue! Call again!" Silence. Then 15 seconds later, "Help!" Same tone, same pause, same volume. Lena slowly turned toward Greg. "That's not right." Greg kept his voice flat. "We stick to grid. We do not pursue sound." So we moved east, keeping formation, and the voice moved with us. Not openly, but every few minutes it came again. Always just ahead, always just far enough to tempt us off the trail. Help, pause, help, pause, help. At 10:02 p.m., Brooks radioed in. "Team 1, did one of you move west?" Greg answered instantly. "Negative." Brooks was quiet for a second. "Because we've got a light in the trees. White beam. Maybe 80 yards upslope. It keeps moving behind the trunks." That hit me harder than the voice. A voice can be explained away. A light is harder. Greg said, "Challenge it." Tyler shouted into the dark, "Search and rescue. Identify yourself." No response. Then Mason said, "Light's gone." A second later, Owen's voice came over the radio in a low tone. "I still hear footsteps." That was the first moment I felt real fear. Not concern, not adrenaline. Fear. Greg ordered Team 2 to hold position and begin falling back towards Cedar Marker 9. Before we got there, Lena found Ethan's backpack. It was lying half open beside a boulder, one strap torn, soaked with mud. Inside were his water bottle, food, map, flashlight, charger. No phone, no blood. But nearby, the ground was destroyed with tracks. Not a clean trail, not one set of prints heading away. It looked like someone had paced in circles around the same patch of ground over and over. Some prints looked like Ethan's, some didn't, and the whole scene felt wrong. Not escape, not confusion, waiting. Then a scream ripped through the radio, real, human, sudden. Then Brooks shouted, "Owen! Owen!" Greg grabbed the mic. "Report!" Tyler's voice came back gasping. "He was right next to me. He was right next to me, and then he was gone." "Who?" "Owen." "How?" "I don't know." Then Mason cut in. "There's blood." We moved fast. By the time we reached them, Owen's radio was on the ground, one glove beside it, several drops of blood on the leaves, and no Owen. Lena dropped low to read the ground, then stopped dead. "This makes no sense," she whispered. The disturbance didn't look like a drag. It looked like something violent had happened right there, and then ended. Greg questioned Tyler first. Tyler was white as a sheet. "We heard movement. Then Owen said someone whispered his name." No one spoke. "From where?" Greg asked. "Behind us." Brooks jumped in. "I didn't hear that," Tyler shot back. "Because you were on the radio." Then Greg cut him off. "Then what?" Tyler swallowed. "I thought I saw someone between the trees, just standing there." Owen turned toward it. Then something crashed through brush to our left. All of us looked over for 1 second. And when we turned back, Owen was gone. Mason muttered, "That's impossible." Tyler looked at him. "Yeah," he said. "I know." Then Greg made the call none of us wanted to hear. This is now officer recovery. Once it's one of your own missing, the job becomes heavier, more personal, more desperate. And beneath all the training is one ugly truth. If a trained rescuer can vanish that fast, anybody can. We tightened formation and began a slow sweep around Owen's last known position. That's when the forest started answering us. At first it was subtle. Footsteps pacing us just outside the light. Branches cracking in places no one stood. A wet, clicking sound moving from one side of the clearing to the other. Breathing, or something like breathing, close enough to hear, but never close enough to find. Then Lena found Ethan. He was wedged inside a narrow rock cleft 40 yards downslope, like he had crawled into it to hide. I saw his hand first, then the side of his face, then his eyes. Open. His throat was torn open, but not cleanly, not like a blade, not like any predator attack I'd ever seen. His chest and shoulders were mangled, but the strangest part was the way his legs looked bruised and twisted, like something had dragged him there and forced him into that crack in the rocks. But what stayed with me wasn't the damage. It was his expression. He looked terrified. But more than that, he looked like he had understood something right before he died. We marked the body and called it in. That should have been the end, but Owen was still missing, and no one was leaving him there. So we held position and expanded the search radius. Then we heard Owen's voice. "Guys!" Tyler almost ran toward it. Greg grabbed his vest and held him back. Mason shouted, "Owen!" The voice came again from the trees. "Please help me." It was Owen's voice. Perfectly. That was the horrifying part. Not close to his voice. Not similar. His voice. But the delivery was wrong. Too even. Too calm. Too controlled. The voice came again. Farther left this time. Tyler. Tyler made this broken sound in his throat, like his body had stopped understanding what was real. "It knows our names," he whispered. No one answered, because we all knew it now. Greg backed us into a defensive position near a ring of boulders. Shoulder to shoulder, no one responds unless we verify visually. The woods went silent, not ordinary quiet. Dead, deliberate silence. Then from behind us, "Help!" We turned. Nothing. Then from the right, "Guys!" Then straight ahead, between two trees, something stepped into view. Even now, I can't say exactly what I saw. My brain kept trying to force it into a human shape and failing. It was tall. Too tall. Its posture was wrong, like joints bending at angles they weren't built for. For 1 second, it seemed almost like a person. Then it lifted its head into the edge of my beam. Its face looked unfinished, stretched, as if features had been pressed into soft material and then dragged sideways. And the mouth, that was the worst part. It moved before the sound came, like it was selecting a voice. Then, In Owen's voice, it said, "Please." Tyler screamed. Brooks stumbled backward. Greg shouted, "Hold the line!" The thing moved, not by running, by appearing closer in violent, jerking bursts. One moment at the trees, the next at the rocks, the next with long fingers curling over stone right in front of us. Lena cracked a flare alive. Red light burst across the clearing. The thing recoiled instantly, not with a scream, with a sound like multiple people inhaling sharply through their teeth. Then it disappeared into the woods. Lena's hand was shaking. "It hates fire." Greg got on the radio immediately. "Officer down, civilian deceased, active threat in Sector D14. Expedite extraction." Dispatch answered through static, barely readable. "Weather interference. Units moving. Hold position. Hold position. In that place." With that thing circling outside the light, we lit every flare we had. Red light painted the trees and rocks and all the drifting fog between them. Outside that glow, the darkness seemed alive. Then it started speaking again. Not just Owen. All of us. It used my voice first. "Greg." Every head turned towards me. Then from the trees, in my exact tone, "Greg, over here." A cold rush went through my body so hard I thought I'd be sick. Then it copied Lena, then Mason. Then it used a woman's voice none of us recognized, sobbing softly somewhere in the dark. It was testing us. That's what terrified me most. It wasn't just mimicking. It was trying on voices like tools, trying different keys in a lock, looking for the one that would make someone step away from the group. It almost got Tyler. One of the flares burned low, leaving one side of the perimeter dimmer than the rest. Not dark, just darker. That was enough. Something pale and fast shot low between the rocks. Tyler hit the ground screaming. I saw a long arm, or leg or something, wrap around his lower body and yank him halfway into a gap between the stones. Greg and I grabbed his arms at the same time. For 1 second, it was a tug of war. Tyler screaming, us pulling. Something on the other end pulling harder than anything that size should have been able to pull. His boots carved trenches through the dirt. Then Lena dropped the burning tip of a flare into the gap. That same horrible inhaling sound came from the dark. The pressure vanished instantly. Tyler came flying back toward us. His pant leg was shredded. Deep bruises were already rising around his calf, but he was alive. Barely. Now we knew two things for sure. It could get through our line, and fire was the only reason it hadn't finished what it started. We gathered every source of heat and flame we had left. Flares, emergency fire starters, even alcohol wipes and gauze to improvise if we had to. This was no longer a search. It was survival. The next stretch of time felt endless. The thing kept circling. Sometimes we heard it close enough to track. Sometimes nothing at all for minutes at a time, which was somehow worse. Once, something slammed into a tree hard enough to shake branches loose. Another time, Ethan's voice came from just outside the flare glow. "Found me." Brooks started crying without even noticing it. I didn't blame him, because by then, the true horror wasn't just that we were being stalked. It was the feeling that we were dealing with something intelligent, something patient, something that understood us faster than we understood it. Then, around 11:30, we saw distant beams through the trees. Real lights, vehicle lights, voices shouting our coordinates. For the first time in over an hour, the darkness stopped feeling absolute. County deputies and the second response team pushed in from the south approach with stronger lamps and more flares. The light widened. The woods seemed to pull back from it. We moved immediately. Tyler half carried, Mason concussed, Brooks nearly mute. Ethan's position marked for recovery. We never found Owen. Not that night. Not ever. Officially, the report said he was lost during a hazardous wilderness recovery involving possible predatory animal interference. That was the version written for paperwork, the sanitized version, the version that let people sleep. But no animal fit the evidence. No known predator moved like that. No drag marks matched Owen's disappearance. No tracks around Ethan's body made sense. And the audio from that night, every recorder we had, came back corrupted in the same window, except one. Part of Brooks's shoulder mic survived. I heard the clip once, only once. It begins with heavy breathing, movement, Greg saying, "Hold the line." Then from somewhere in the dark, very softly, a voice says, "Which one of you is hurt?" Not repeated, not mimicked, spoken, like it was thinking, like it was learning. The search for Owen continued for 6 days. On the 4th day, his jacket was found hanging 30 feet up in a pine tree, not torn there, placed there, nothing else around it. No body, no blood, no explanation. That was when most of the volunteers stopped showing up. After that, the search was just procedure. Hope was gone. I stayed until the end because I couldn't accept leaving him out there. But after Black Ridge, I was never the same. I still did the job for a while, 8 more months officially, but something in me had changed. I stopped trusting the woods, stopped trusting isolated voices, stopped trusting my own ears. If somebody called my name from another room, I needed to see them before I answered. I started sleeping with lights on. Then I moved. Street lights, traffic, neighbors, concrete, places where the dark had edges. People ask me why I'm talking now. Why tell this story after all these years? Because last week another hiker went missing at Black Ridge. Different trail, different season, same forest. And buried in the local report was one line that made my blood go cold. A camper told deputies he heard someone calling for help from the trees. Always the same voice, always the same tone, always from just far enough away that he couldn't locate it. He said it sounded almost human, almost. And before he ran back to his truck, he heard it change. The voice stopped calling for help. It moved closer, near his left ear, and it asked, "Are you alone?" I don't know what took Ethan. I don't know what happened to Owen. I don't know whether that thing lives in Black Ridge, passes through it, or has been waiting there longer than any trail, map, or ranger station. I only know this. Ethan did not die alone. Whatever killed him knew exactly how to draw rescuers deeper into the woods. And if it had wanted all of us dead that night, I don't believe any of us would have made it out. That's the thought that keeps me up. Not that we escaped, that we were allowed to, because maybe it only wanted one, or maybe it wanted witnesses. A story carried back into the world. A warning. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the heater is humming, I still hear things that shouldn't be there. A branch scraping outside the siding. Footsteps in gravel where no one is standing. A voice hidden in the mechanical noise of the house. Never loud enough to prove. Never clear enough to record. But once, 3 months after I quit the job, I woke up at 2:17 in the morning to the sound of my old SAR radio crackling in the garage. That radio had no battery in it. I know that because I removed it myself. Still, I heard static, then a voice, broken, thin, very far away. Owen. Just 6 words. Don't let it sound like you. I went into the garage with every light in the house turned on. The radio was dead and cold. I threw it away the next morning. Didn't help. Because the problem was never the radio. The problem is that once you hear something wearing a human voice from a place no human should be, you never fully trust sound again. Even now, in crowded places, I sometimes get that crawling sensation at the back of my neck. Like something nearby is listening more carefully than everyone else, patient, practicing, learning. And I wonder how many voices it knows now, how many names, how many ways it has learned to sound harmless. Because people think monsters roar. They think evil arrives announcing itself. They think danger looks wrong from the start. But the worst things don't. The worst things sound familiar. They sound helpless. They sound injured. They sound like somebody calling your name from the dark. And by the time you realize the voice is wrong, it's already close enough to touch you. So if you ever go hiking and the woods get too quiet, if you hear someone calling for help from somewhere off the trail, and the voice never changes, same tone, same distance, same pause, do not answer. Do not follow it. Do not step off the path trying to be the hero. Because some things know exactly what kind of person comes running when they hear fear in another human voice. And if one of those things ever learns yours, pray it never gets a reason to use it. Because some nights, when the wind hits my house just right, I still hear it outside, soft, patient, standing just beyond the glass, no longer pretending to be lost, no longer asking for help, just waiting. And right before the sound fades, it says the same thing every time. Sometimes in Owen's voice, sometimes in mine, sometimes in a voice I don't recognize at all. It whispers, "I'm still here." If you made it to the end, comment below. I would never follow the voice. And tell me honestly. If you were alone in the woods at night and something in the trees called your name in a familiar voice, would you answer?